everyone! In this video, I am going to show you how to draw the human figure using construction sketches. Let's get into it. Now, we are going to cover the very basics of anatomy construction and the process of turning that into a successful sketch that will help you create finished pieces either digitally or physically. To start, I want to cover what construction lines are and why we use them. I'll explain it in an analogy. To further the concept of construction, when something is getting built, you go through stages of planning and construction. What we'll be doing is focusing on this stage, the skeleton of the building. While no one sees this part of the building, once it's finished, clearly it plays a vital role, and it's the same for drawing. So in a sense, I'll be showing how to roughly sketch the skeleton of human figures, leading into muscle and fat to prepare you for a finished figure. To start off, you'll need a reference. It can be tricky to draw anything without a photo or real life to look at. There are many ways for you to get a reference. There are specific websites with pose options if you're looking for something specific, though I just tend to browse places like Pinterest to get body references and inspiration. Even the pop-up ads can prove useful when sketching figures. Here's a pro tip. I'll have a number of them scattered throughout this video. Now, when it comes to finding a reference, it tends to be more helpful, especially when starting out, to find references where most of the body is shown, so you can see the muscles, curves, and movement of the body. Now let's jump right in. Grabbing my reference photo, let's run down how to make a successful human figure sketch. We are going to start with breaking down the body into its simplest shapes and building from there. So starting off, the body is made up of three main parts: the head, rib cage, and pelvis. This is our simplest form. Now let's move down the body with more specifics. Starting with the head, most often people tend to just draw ovals or circles, but that's actually only half of what makes up the head. There's the cranium, which is the circle. Then we also have a triangular shape that forms the jaw, which can be drawn in various angles depending on the direction the rest of the head is facing. And that direction can be indicated by adding a vertical line. Another helpful line of reference is a horizontal line, which is where the eyes will be drawn. Pro tip, the eyes are actually in the center of the head, so unless your figure is looking up or down, keep that horizontal line in the middle. From then, we'll go back to our rib cage, adding just a bit more of directional and constructional lines to help with where the figure is facing. Moving to the pelvis, once again, one of our main circles. From the neck to the pelvis is our spine, which can be deconstructed to a simple curving line. Next up is shoulders. Now, even if you aren't going to show the whole of both shoulders, it helps to draw full circles to guide arm placement and perspective. Pro tip, there's a difference between men and women's shoulders. That is, men's tend to be broader and bigger, while women's shoulders are smaller. For arms, simple lines work great, with the circle of the elbow coming in just at the end of the rib cage or in between the rib cage and pelvis. Again, going for simple lines and shapes, so for hands, rectangles work great, narrowing in as you get to the fingers. Next up, you'll add two large circles within the pelvis to indicate the hips. Pro tip, for women, most often their hips broaden out to where their shoulders reach, while men's hips tend to be smaller and their shoulders reach farther outwards than their hips. Just as your arms, lines running down for legs work great. Your legs should make up the second half of your figure, and knees stopping halfway down your legs. Ending at feet, triangles are the way to go. Now to add muscle and fat to the figure. Starting at the face, again you can begin to add features like hairlines, ears, eyes, nose, and mouth lines. Pro tip, reminder that eyes are in the middle of the head. The nose is halfway between your eyes and chin, and the mouth is halfway from your nose to your chin. For the neck, you're really just adding 2 lines outside of your center one, breaking outwards to meet your shoulders. Quick details for the neck and collarbone can be added. Now you're going to curve around the circle of the shoulders and begin the arms, which will stay about as big as the shoulder, then get smaller as you meet the elbow, curving around the circle and creating an indent. The forearm once again broadens out slightly, then begins to meet back up at the wrist, creating a narrow wrist that grows outwards to follow the shape of the hand, adding fingers. Down through the chest, you can make one arm overlap it and have the chest cover the other arm, creating a slight hourglass as you move through the spine and expand at the pelvis. Men's chests tend to be broader and have less of that hourglass shape, while the women's will have more of a taller, slender shape. And of course, adding in the breasts, which have a downward weight to them, creating somewhat of a teardrop shape, with more dramatic hourglass shape through the chest to the pelvis. Curving around the pelvis and starting at the legs, the thighs stay about as big as those hip circles, then get smaller as you meet the knee, curving around the circle and creating an indent. Calves once again broaden out slightly, then begin to meet back up at the ankle. For feet, draw around that triangle, making the heel and go into the toes, and that's it for muscles and fat. Now the refining process is really up to you and the style you're going for. For me, I prefer somewhat of an animated look, but feel free to experiment and find the style that works for you. Whether that's a realistic approach or illustrative, find the one you enjoy working in the most. And at this point your sketch is all but done and you are ready for the line work phase. Solidifying the muscle lines you've made and adding details, you can add the clothes you'd like and colors to begin making your sketch a finished piece. The great thing about this sketching process is how it can be applied to just about anything else you want to draw. If you're looking to add an environment to your figure, objects, or animals, use the same principles of starting with a skeleton, building the bulk, and then coming out with a lined, colored, and finished piece. Of course, this is only a quick overview of the entire human figure, so I recommend going back and conducting your own studies and practices on parts that may need more help, like hands, faces, perspective, or poses. But this should get you on your way to making productive and useful figure sketches. Thank you so much for joining me today in constructing sketches. I hope this helped you learn how to better sketch a human figure. Of course, be sure to practice as much as you can to refine and solidify the skills you're learning. All of the photos I used here will be referenced down in the description box. Again, thanks so much and happy sketching!